Batik isn't just fabric. It's a billion-dollar story. Consider the intricate patterns of traditional textiles. These are not just threads and dyes. They are living histories woven into the fabric. Each motif carries generations of ancestral memory and specific cultural significance. When these items enter the global sphere, they acquire an aura of exclusivity. The complexity of the design suggests immense labor and unique knowledge. This perceived rarity elevates the item far beyond its physical cost alone. People pay for the story embedded in every single thread. The psychological drivers behind this phenomenon are deeply rooted in cultural familiarity. Our minds instinctively trust what is familiar and recognizable to us. When an object originates from a specific, rich culture, it bypasses skepticism instantly. This familiarity creates an immediate sense of authenticity and inherent worth. It is the subconscious mechanism that flags these goods as inherently superior assets. The origin itself becomes a powerful source of perceived luxury for the consumer. Cultural narratives function as powerful tools for elevating commodity status. They assign a layer of mythology onto mundane objects, making them aspirational. A simple piece of craft becomes a symbol of deep-seated heritage and refined taste. This narrative framing separates the item from mass-produced alternatives immediately. Consumers are not just buying an object. They are investing in a cultural legacy. This act taps into a fundamental human need for belonging and distinction. The perception of value is therefore heavily mediated by cultural context. What one group values highly, another may overlook entirely. This differential valuation creates a unique premium for Indonesian goods internationally. It is the collective agreement on what constitutes true luxury in this context. This framework allows simple items to transcend their physical reality and become symbolic assets. The narrative becomes more valuable than the material itself. How does this mechanism operate in the global marketplace? It exploits the human tendency to seek meaning behind consumption. Consumers are drawn to products that offer a deeper connection beyond mere utility. This psychological link solidifies the high price point globally. The story of craftsmanship and tradition becomes the ultimate justification for the premium. It is an invisible economic force driven purely by cultural resonance and desire. The earliest forms of trade were not about simple exchange, but a profound psychological game. Merchants understood that value was not in the physical object itself, but in the story attached to it. They began positioning certain goods along ancient trade routes. This strategic placement created an immediate sense of desirability among distant buyers. It was an invisible architecture built upon cultural longing and perceived rarity. These early traders masterfully used geography as a tool for creating artificial scarcity. They controlled access to specific commodities, making them seem like rare treasures. The initial pricing reflected this carefully constructed narrative of exclusivity and distant origin. Consider the weight of scarcity in those ancient markets. When a commodity traveled vast distances, its physical presence became secondary to its symbolic meaning. Early positioning established a psychological anchor for premium pricing. A small, carefully selected batch suggested exclusivity and difficulty in acquisition. This method bypassed simple supply and demand mechanics entirely. It tapped into the innate human desire for what is rare and unattainable. The perceived distance added another layer of mystique to the transaction itself. This early market positioning laid the foundation for enduring premium worth. Historical trade routes were complex systems of psychological manipulation. Merchants utilized the slow pace of travel to amplify the perceived value of their wares. The journey itself became part of the product's story. Imbuing it with narrative depth, this extended timeline transformed a simple purchase into an epic quest for something special. Travelers experienced this temporal element as a form of delayed gratification. The anticipation built up along the route made the final acquisition feel more momentous. This slow unfolding was essential in establishing high perceived value among consumers. The concept of scarcity was weaponized in early economic positioning. By restricting the flow of goods, traders artificially inflated demand for those items. This created an environment where the cost reflected not just production, but also access and story. Early market positioning dictated that certain goods were inherently superior due to their elusive nature. This psychological weight allowed for premium pricing structures to be established firmly. The scarcity was a carefully managed illusion designed to elicit strong desire from potential buyers. By the way, if you like this discussion, don't forget to subscribe. There are many more interesting topics coming up. Light bulb. The physical geography of trade routes imprinted itself deeply on commodity worth. The difficulty of access became a tangible symbol of elevated status for the goods involved. This association linked the product to arduous journeys and exclusive destinations. Early positioning thus tied the item to a lineage of difficult acquisition. Consumers unconsciously absorbed this narrative, equating rarity with intrinsic quality. The historical context provided the necessary framework for premium valuation to take root. This historical method established an enduring psychological contract with the consumer. The premium price was no longer just a cost. It was the entry fee to a privileged narrative. Early positioning successfully transformed simple commodities into coveted assets. This process relied on weaving cultural mythology directly into the commercial exchange. The memory of the difficult journey became attached to the final, high-priced item. It created a psychological loop where value and price were inseparable concepts. Your brain is a master of shortcuts. It takes in millions of pieces of information every second. But to survive, it must decide what to trust instantly. And it does this using a tiny region called the ventral striatum. This is the engine of desire. When you see something familiar, like a batik pattern from your hometown, your ventral striatum lights up. It releases a flood of dopamine. That feels good. But here is the dark twist. That same shortcut can be hijacked. Marketers know this. They craft stories that make your brain treat a simple product as something precious. Your own biology becomes a trap. Consider the amygdala. It is your brain's alarm system. It scans for threats and rewards. When you see a product labeled as authentic or traditional, your amygdala relaxes. It signals safety. This is why Indonesian goods can command a premium. Your brain associates cultural familiarity with lower risk. But here is the manipulation. Brands artificially inject cultural cues into products that have no real heritage. They use colors, symbols, and words that trigger your amygdala's comfort zone. You pay more because your brain feels safe, but the safety is an illusion. The price tag reflects a manufactured emotion, not real value. Dopamine is not just about pleasure. It is about anticipation. Your brain releases dopamine when it expects a reward. This is the basis of craving. When you see a product from a region you trust, your brain predicts a positive outcome. It releases dopamine before you even buy. That anticipation feels powerful, but it can be exploited. Marketers create scarcity to heighten anticipation. Limited editions, exclusive releases. Your brain's dopamine system goes into overdrive. You feel an urgent need to buy. The price becomes secondary. You are not buying a product. You are buying the feeling of anticipation itself. The prefrontal cortex is your rational brain. It weighs costs and benefits, but it is easily overruled by the limbic system, which processes emotions. When you see a premium Indonesian product, your limbic system activates first. It generates feelings of pride, nostalgia, or trust. By the time your prefrontal cortex gets involved, the emotional decision is already made. You rationalize the high price. You tell yourself it is worth it for the quality. But the truth is, your brain made the choice in milliseconds. The price premium is a tax on your emotional shortcuts. Mirror neurons play a role too. These cells fire when you see someone else experience an emotion. If you see a respected figure enjoying an Indonesian product, your mirror neurons simulate that enjoyment. You feel a vicarious pleasure. This is why celebrity endorsements work so well. But it goes deeper. When a brand uses imagery of artisans crafting by hand, your mirror neurons activate. You feel the effort and authenticity. Your brain equates that feeling with higher value. You pay more because your neurons trick you into believing you are part of that craft. The price is for the shared experience. The hippocampus is your memory center. It stores associations. When you repeatedly see Indonesian goods linked with quality, your hippocampus strengthens that connection. Over time, the association becomes automatic. You no longer question the premium price. Your brain retrieves the memory of quality every time you see the product. This is classical conditioning. Marketers bombard you with positive associations. They sponsor events, use influencers, and control narratives. Your hippocampus becomes a database of manufactured trust. The price premium is no longer a choice. It is a reflex. The insula processes disgust and trust. When you encounter something unfamiliar, your insula may trigger a feeling of unease, but with familiar cultural products, the insula remains calm. This is why global brands localize their marketing. They adopt local symbols to bypass your insula's distrust. For Indonesian goods, the insula is already at ease, but this can be manipulated. Brands can fake authenticity. They use packaging that mimics traditional designs. Your insula does not detect the fraud. You trust the product because your brain's disgust system is silent. The premium price is a reward for your brain's false sense of security. Now you understand the mechanics. Your brain is wired to trust the familiar. It rewards you with dopamine, calms your amygdala, it activates your mirror neurons. Marketers exploit every one of these pathways. They craft narratives that turn simple goods into symbols of identity. You are not paying for coffee or fabric. You are paying for the feeling of belonging. The price premium is the cost of your brain's shortcuts. But awareness is the first step to freedom. When you recognize the manipulation, you can choose. You can decide if the product is truly worth the premium, or if you are just feeding your own neural traps. The same coffee beans that cost pennies in a local market are sold for hundreds of dollars in a chic Tokyo cafe. How? The answer lies not in the bean, but in the story wrapped around it. Global marketers have mastered the art of exploiting our cognitive biases. They know that a simple origin label can trigger a cascade of neural associations. Authenticity becomes a manufactured illusion. Scarcity is artificially created. And we, the consumers, pay the premium without a second thought. This is the dark side of branding, where perception is carefully engineered to override reality. Consider the concept of manufactured scarcity. A brand announces a limited edition product from a specific region. Suddenly, the item becomes a must-have, but is the scarcity real? Often, it is a calculated strategy. By controlling supply, marketers trigger the scarcity heuristic. Our brains equate rarity with value. This psychological shortcut is so powerful that it can make us pay 10 times more for something that is essentially identical to the mass-produced version. The illusion of exclusivity drives demand, and the price tag becomes a status symbol. Narrative control is another potent weapon. Brands don't just sell products. They sell stories. A handcrafted batik from Indonesia is not just fabric. It is a tale of heritage, of centuries-old tradition, of the hands that dyed it. This narrative elevates the item from a commodity to a cultural artifact. Marketers carefully curate these stories, emphasizing authenticity and tradition, but the narrative is often simplified or even distorted to fit a romanticized image that appeals to global consumers. The real story becomes secondary to the marketable one. The exploitation of cognitive biases goes deeper. The halo effect is a favorite tool. When a product is associated with a positive attribute, like a pristine natural environment or a skilled artisan, that positivity spreads to the product itself. A bottle of water from a remote Indonesian island is not just water. It is purity, nature, escape. The halo effect makes us believe the product is superior in every way. Marketers carefully select these associations, knowing that a single positive image can inflate perceived worth dramatically. Social proof is another bias ruthlessly exploited. When we see celebrities or influencers endorsing a regional product, our trust in that product skyrockets. We assume that if someone with status uses it, it must be valuable. Marketers pay top dollar for these endorsements, knowing that the social proof effect can override our own judgment. The product's actual quality becomes irrelevant. The mere association with a respected figure is enough to command a premium. We are buying the approval, not the item. The dark applications extend to the manipulation of our sense of identity. Brands encourage us to see their products as extensions of ourselves. Buying a premium Indonesian good is not just a purchase. It is a statement. It says we are sophisticated, culturally aware, discerning. This identity appeal is powerful. It taps into our need for self-enhancement and social belonging. Marketers craft campaigns that make us feel that owning the product elevates our status. The price becomes a badge of honor, a visible proof of our refined taste. So what can we do? Awareness is the first step. Recognize that the premium you pay is often for a story, not for superior quality. Ask yourself, is this scarcity real? Is this narrative authentic? By questioning the psychological tricks, you can make more rational choices. But the industry knows this. They will keep refining their methods. The battle between our conscious mind and their engineered perceptions is ongoing. The invisible price tag will always be there. The question is whether we choose to see it. Hi everyone. Quick reminder. Subscribe for high-quality daily content. Sparkles Part 2 is dropping tomorrow. Subscribe for notifications. Loudspeaker.